Okay, welcome back. It seems like everyone is talking about electronic dance music these days. A lot of that is probably because it's one of the areas of the music business that is actually making money. But there's a lot more to EDM than money and big light shows. This is a universe of entrepreneurs and innovators who haven't shied away from doing things differently. Electronic music does face some of the same challenges as the broader music community, from unauthorized distribution to monetization in an era of ubiquitous access. And then there's a live space where new opportunities to engage fans and make money are coupled with increasing consolidation, as well as no small amount of hostility from outsiders who misjudge what this scene is all about. We are really excited to have assembled a panel of EDM experts to look at what's working and what isn't, and possible takeaways for the broader music ecosystem. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We have a really fun panel prepared for you. And we're all very lucky because all the panelists here are highly accomplished in their respective professions, and we've got people here representing different types of occupations in the industry, so that you're going to get perspectives from a lot of the different key players that make up our industry. So with that being said, I'd like to ask the panel to just briefly introduce themselves, who you are, what you do, and let's start with you, Ben.
Sure. I'm Ben Hogan. I'm an agent at Circle Talent Agency. I've been there for 7 years. I live in LA. I represent acts like Bro Safari, Iodo, Snails, Slander, et cetera, and OK. Some of those names may be familiar, some may not. But right now, focusing on growing acts basically from the ground up. And that's me.
Hi, I'm Fox Stevenson. I've been a EDM act for about 7 years now. I've been playing shows for about 5 of those years. Recently had quite a few releases on mainly American labels, and have been growing my fan base out here for a while. And yeah, been into the music and doing the music for a really long time. That's kind of my view.
Pete.
Hi, I'm Pete Kalamoutsos. I own Glow and Echostage in Washington, D.C. Been doing shows since 15 years now, and we have everybody from Tiesto, Avicii, to Lorde, Rick Ross. But my focus is all the EDM shows, dance music shows that we do in festivals.
I'm Kurosh Nasseri. I'm an entertainment lawyer, so I'm on the boring end of all this. Our clientele includes some of the notables on the artist side, ranging from Afrojack to Paul Van Dyk. The corporate side, companies such as Pete's, event promoters, download sites, etc. So really across the board, and accidentally ended up with a boutique practice that is focused on this type of music pretty much from the beginning, which was almost 23 years ago.
Thanks. So one of the reasons that we are here today, obviously, is because of the newfound popularity of electronic music. And this is very similar to something that happened about 15 years ago with rap music, when rap crossed over into mainstream media, and there was a rush to figure out how to monetize this popularity. So my question for the panelists, now that the same thing's happening in America with electronic music, is what do you think the tipping point or catalyst was that made everyone take note of electronic music now?
Sure. I mean, I think on a broader scale, there's some of the biggest tracks of all time have been used in the mainstream. You've seen pieces of dance music in the mainstream, but when the full shift started to happen, I think was when you had guys like Skrillex winning Grammys. That's like a moment where everyone saw it and had to appreciate it from that standpoint. I think also, you know, for me, I remember there was a commercial that AT&T did with Diplo like 3 or 4 years ago, before he was really nearly as large as he is now from a live touring standpoint, where I was sitting there watching it, and it went across, it was a nationwide commercial, and wondering like how many people actually know who Diplo is, people in their 40s and 50s, and realizing that these, you know, big companies like AT&T were starting to seek out that talent and use it from a promotional angle. That was kind of foreshadowing of where we are today, where everybody's using, you know, that music and, you know, in that way. So I think those were 2 examples for me.
Yeah, I got to go with the Skrillex thing as well. Around 3 years ago, he was. We had the whole dubstep thing happening worldwide, but it was on a much kind of deeper, sort of underground, cool, kind of fringy sort of thing. And then he came along, and suddenly it was bright, and it was loud, and it was angry. It had metal crossover appeal to people who were ready to go heavy, and like that for me personally, that it looked like it completely spawned pretty much everything that's followed in the last few years and gone on to be something global. That's why he's still around and doing so much great things. Yeah, definitely Skrillex, I think.
Pete and Kurosh, before you answer, since you guys do more of the business end of this industry, is this something that you guys anticipated when you started your careers, or just get lucky?
For me, I always felt like in the beginning you had to fall in love with the music. You had to it guided you in. It wasn't like it was in your face. It was like you went out to a club and your friend dragged you out, and you heard songs you never heard on the radio or anything like that, and that was special to you. You looked forward to doing that every week, and that was in the beginning, like in the in the 90s. It wasn't like nowadays you go out, you hear the same thing you hear on the radio, you hear when you go out to a club or a concert. Back then was an anticipation for me, at least, like I want to hear something different, and I heard this cool remix this guy did, and it's just that's what drew me into it. And I think that as technology got bigger, everyone has a laptop, everyone has headphones, and people could just, even though you might not be really good, but in your mind you think you're good, and you could be a really good producer. I think that's makes it something like anybody could do. You could love it, It's just like it's something that anybody could do. It's hard to play in a band. You have to get a guitar and learn how to play drums or whatever. But I have a laptop. I could do it. I could try and learn how to become a DJ or a producer. I might not be good, but I think I'm good. I'm having fun doing it. So that keeps me, it's part of our culture. Just like with hip hop, it was a culture, and now this is becoming part of our culture as well.
I don't want to hog the mic, but I got to deal with two questions now. So on the first one, I think Pete put his finger on it. Those who are succeeding in this business have one thing in common: they love the music, and that's typically what brings them to this in the first place. That's the way it worked for me. I was a regular commercial transactions lawyer with a musical background and was going out at the time, and a friend of mine who was a DJ dragged me to New York, and that was the first time I heard house music, and I came out of that night thinking to myself, wow, this is the new rock and roll. And that sort of is the source of everything, and Pete's also absolutely right. If you love what you do, then it's not really work. So that's sort of the driving force. In terms of the watershed point, it happened in Europe much, much earlier, and like in any other business, you sort of go through peaks and troughs. So when dance music broke big in Europe commercially, I kept asking myself, what's the difference? Why is it not happening here? And I had plenty of people, plenty of my peers from law school telling me that I'm crazy anyway for doing what I was doing, so it was a really relevant question. So to me, the glass ceiling that we finally broke through was twofold: MTV and radio. And that was a critical difference in Europe, because in MTV Europe, at the time when MTV was still doing, broadcasting music videos, their policy was different in Europe. So if there was a dance music video, that would get played on MTV. Here, it absolutely would not. Radio programming, also different. In the UK, going all the way back to the early 90s, and maybe a tad earlier, if a record was hot, it would get onto BBC Radio 1. It would become a chart hit. So that happened at least 15 years earlier than it did here. So if we look at those two barriers and look at what happened here, to me, the watershed moment was the absolute breakdown of MTV as a music video medium. For whatever commercial reasons, they decided that reality shows of various sorts are more appealing to their target audience than music videos. And that sort of coincided with the rise of YouTube. So all of a sudden, this critical distribution channel for music videos was blown wide open. So it didn't matter if somebody in a focus group room in New York, for an MTV program decided that, oh, this is not commercial enough, it's too underground, it's too risky, or whatnot, did not matter, because all of a sudden the relevant consumer generation was accessing their videos online anyway, and YouTube is a level playing field. So there we go. Music videos from this genre of music all of a sudden had as much of a chance as all the other ones. At radio, I really have to credit David Guetta before Skrillex, and I love Skrillex's stuff. And he's absolutely revolutionary and deserves all the credit he got in terms of the multiple Grammy wins, because he had the courage to stick with it musically. But David Guetta was the first one, through his collaborations with major pop acts, to blow the door wide open for US Top 40 radio, which was the other critical element which was missing in that equation here. So for me, the watershed moment was really this perfect storm of blowing open these locked doors in media, television, and radio. And from there on, it was off to the races, because, in terms of talent and musical innovation, there was plenty at the table already. And, that way it was able to connect. Two other factors that are important. One, the rise of music festivals. There's an absolute explosion of music festivals, and the reason they're so relevant here in the American market is because of the legal age for drinking, which is different in Europe. So in Europe, 18 plus means, 18 plus, so those who are over 18 get to drink, which means they get to go to the clubs where a lot of this music is happening. Here you have this barrier up to age 21, which makes the festivals so important, because you have a 3-year spread in that spectrum that can consume this music at a festival and may not necessarily be able to do so in a club setting. So that was critical. And the other one was, the revival of the clubs, which I think in the States was led by Vegas.
Well, one of the things I want to touch on that both you and Ben brought up were the Grammy nominations and the Grammy wins. So, we've seen a lot more electronic influence in pop albums. We're getting Grammy nomination categories. So now that we have built this foundation, is this something that's here to stay, or is this a bubble that we need to be jumping on now? And since all of us obviously build our careers on this, hopefully it's here to stay. But what do you guys think?
Well, I think that, in terms of straight dance music is becoming very pop here, slowly. I was just in Amsterdam a week ago and went to the Ziggo Dome, where Afrojack played for, I think, 9,000 people. 12,000 people.
Yeah,
and
12.
you're sitting in this arena, and it's a massive arena, and there Afrojack is definitely, I would say, a pop star. He sold the show out, and it's very different from over here, where you see 18 to 24 as the major demo that's going to these shows. There, I'm out buying a drink, and there's a 9-year-old kid with his 45-year-old dad there, and he's got an Afrojack shirt on, and he's at the show as like a huge fan, and it's just a much wider audience over there. You hear it on the radio every time you step into a cab, and I think you're going to see that somewhat happen here, where we're going to appreciate these EDM stars eventually as pop stars as they continue to grow. And then I think on another level, you see pop stars right now having to kind of reinvent themselves using musical influences that have long existed in the EDM or in the dance music world to make their records. Like, you listen to Katy Perry's Dark Horse, it's a bass music song, but they're putting it out to the widest audience possible, and I think it's kind of works in each direction, where pop stars are using EDM, EDM stars are becoming pop stars. So it'll be an interesting kind of meeting in the middle, but I think that is the direction we see right now.
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting art form to be part of, because you can have a band and you can produce a bassist and a guitarist and a drummer in as many ways as you like, but it's still all going to boil down to that, and then maybe a keyboardist or a vocalist on top of all that, but it's still going to sound like that. And while that's great for a songwriting kind of thing, you can take this digital way of creating music, and you can have someone who can, somewhere they can blow it all wide open, and suddenly it doesn't even matter what they write. They've completely blown that sound open, and you can hear and instantly know before even hearing like a vocal or anything. Oh, that's them. You can create your own sound palette within this, and that pertaining to pop music can be something really exciting, in that you'll have, I'm sure in the coming years, you'll have people who will have like a certain producer or a certain style that they have their things produced in that will become brand, and maybe it won't be conscious to the wider community of music listeners on the radio, but that'll happen. You'll have people having their trademark sounds because dance music now is palatable to people, and digital electronically produced music, from nothing to something using only digital sources, is something that people are starting to listen to. I think it's super exciting that can happen because it's a songwriting tool as well. Me personally, I write songs and do vocals over songs myself. Over electronics tracks myself, and even just as a songwriting tool, while it's great to be able to sit down at a piano and sit down at a piano and sing along and find something that way, there's a really new age, I guess, thing, the way you're producing and it talks back to you, and you can hear something that's been inspired by producing, as opposed to having songwriters go along. You've got a song and you go produce it. I think there'll be some incredible things that will come from the future of that nature.
One of the things I want to ask, and when I get to Pete and Kurosh, I'm hoping you guys will answer this instead now that we've heard from them. Everyone's been using the word EDM, and obviously the panel, it's called the EDM panel. There's many different styles of electronic and dance music, and it's all been branded as one thing, EDM. But a lot of people that actually work in the industry seem to have a little bit of a problem with this overall characterization. So I was just wondering if you two maybe had any strong opinions on this matter.
My friends growing up used to always call it techno. And I was like, it's not techno, I don't know those words. But it doesn't matter. I feel like the people that call it EDM are like, at first I really hated it. I was like, these guys just got on this bandwagon and they're calling it EDM, and it's not that. It's just a label. It doesn't matter to me now. I think good music's good music. And I think, like he said with David Guetta, like he didn't just put dance music on the map commercially in America. He changed hip hop. Mm-hmm. I talked to him one time. He told me, he did a song with what's his name, Akon, and I was like, when it first came out, I was like, hey man, I love that song. And he told me, I wanted to bring Akon into my world. I didn't want him, me to step into his world. So the whole production of the track was like, him saying like, hey, this is my song. It's a dance music song. It's not like, back in the day, used to be like a rock guy or a hip hop artist's song, and the DJ was just with DJ so-and-so real small. Now it's about Tiesto and Icona Pop or whoever, So I think the labels are, if it helps people know we're talking about what we do for a living, then it's okay.
Kurosh, you have a different opinion?
Again, it's going to look like I'm hogging the mic because I end up with two questions instead of one.
No, you can just answer that one. You can answer the second one.
So in terms of the bubble, it's been a bubble since '95. I'll never forget it. I had a call from a colleague saying that, okay, so, what kind of music do you listen to? And we had just spent about 4 months negotiating a deal. And I said, well, this is what I listen to. He goes, no. What do you listen to? I'm like, type of music we just negotiated a deal about. So he started to lay into me and said, you're crazy. You shouldn't commit your career to that. This is just a bubble. It'll be over in 2 years. 1995. So that much for the bubble. However, like in any other business, there are going to be ups and downs. I just look at it the same way as the stock market. There are going to be corrections. You're going to look at a trend line. As long as the trend line's going up, it's all good. And the reason I think the genre will remain healthy with a long-term trend line that's positive is because of creativity, and Fox spoke to that. I hadn't heard of Fox Stevenson before, so I decided to educate myself, and what better source than YouTube, the ultimate music discovery tool, and I checked out his video, and I was like, wow, this is actually really good stuff. And the reason I thought it was good is because Fox actually combines a lot of elements from different genres in his own unique way, and I think that's sort of that's the magic sauce for electronic dance music. And I'm going to spell it out to sort of segue into your second question. EDM, when they first came up to it, I thought to myself, oh, how clever. Somebody finally decided to come up with an acronym for electronic dance music, which is the best descriptor. And then it very quickly went south from there because EDM ended up being a descriptive label for a very specific type of sound, very specific type of, I think, Las Vegas and main stage music festival type of sound. And that has sort of lasted to this day. Many artists in the genre are distancing themselves quite forcefully from the term EDM because they really do not want to be associated because they feel their music is so different. So yes, you're right, it was called techno, and actually before that it was called house.
Yep.
So, I sort of take this whole debate with a grain of salt. I think it helps the general public, to identify it as something and sort of to group it all together. So it really depends on the level of sophistication of, that particular crowd that you have in this conversation with. I think to the general public, EDM is just fine if it helps people to find a reference point for a musical genre, great. Hopefully people will recognize over time that musical genre is actually an incredibly broad spectrum of different types of sound and production techniques and, all those good things. And my 2 cents.
So one of the things I want to go back to, which you brought up before, was the popularity of festivals. So not just festivals, but also dance clubs, as Pete can speak to. In this specific genre of music, live events just seems to really be bringing in large amounts of money for the artists. And I just want to know, why do you think that the live music space is so important and so successful, specifically for electronic music?
Sure, I mean, a couple of reasons come to mind immediately. First of all, the shows in dance music have always been kind of catered towards a very social and very open experience. Not only is there the aspect of the sound and the music, which is why people are going, and the popularity of the music, but you also have the light show and the atmosphere in the club, and the dance music whole atmosphere of openness and social behavior is kind of cultivated, I think, a scene that's very open to taking in new people, as opposed to other genres of music, which I think can be very, very hard to kind of get into. This is a very easy scene of music to get into. It's easy to go to a show and become a part of the movement and make friends and continue going to the shows. And I think that's how a lot of people become fans in the space. You go to your first show and then it becomes a hobby. I also think, for us, when we routed the first kind of hard ticket excision tour, he's one of our major clients, he does bass music primarily, we were going into House of Blues rooms and Live Nation rooms that were all ages, and we were actually selling all ages tickets. And so the kids who were going to the shows were 16, 17 years old, and at the time, there were very few other concerts that they could even go to because, like Kurosh said, most events in music are 18 plus, 21 plus due to alcohol and other reasons. So we routed this whole tour that eventually almost the entire thing sold out, and it was all ages, and it was a very young crowd. And so I think, whether it's in the high school scene or the early college scene, these people were kind of explosively, virally sharing this music with one another, not only because it's great music, in my opinion, but because they could go out to the shows immediately and go participate in it. And that kind of feeds into the festival atmosphere as well. There are all ages festivals, there are 18 plus festivals, and it's opened up a whole untapped demo, I think, of young people with money that are curious, that need to find something, a creative outlet, and they've kind of searched for dance music and found that it's a very open, fun scene to be a part of. So that's, I think, why it's been so successful. 2 reasons, at least.
It's also free promo. It works. It perpetuates itself. So for example, an artist can have a track that they want to go everywhere. They want it. It's almost like new radio. So for example, someone can have a track, then they want it to go everywhere, and then they get it sent out. Like most DJs nowadays, there's a thing called Fat Drop that sends you pretty much from every label within dance music. They're on this, and they send out their releases like a month or 2 prior to, a month or 2 before the actual release is due out, and that way, so I can hear this track and think, I really like this track. I'm going to play this in one of my shows. And there are hundreds of thousands of other DJs that have got these tracks before they're actually due to be released to the public. So you're suddenly getting promotion from other DJs, and like this track's being played all over the world and at shows, and it creates a buzz before people even know what they're buzzing about. And so because of that, you have so many artists that have tracks that are being just pushed everywhere, and you're hearing them, and it's like, when's this coming out? And then you get it. And that's one of the reasons that there's so much money going around in dance music, because people just want the tracks, because they got memories and they went crazy to this track at Ultra or some other festival.
I think, for me at least, for what I do, I think Tiesto was the first one to want to give people an experience. Like, you would go to his shows, and he was very particular. Like, as a promoter at the time, you're like, oh man, why does he have this crazy rider? Who wants an LED wall? Just go play in a club. What is this? And then I started appreciating it. He wanted everyone to walk into his show and have the Tiesto experience with the visuals, the confetti, the CO2, and the vibe. And I think that, years ago, you can get away with having a club and you have a DJ playing in a DJ booth, and he wanted it dark and just to have his music speak for itself. Well, you have to take it to the next level. And I think all the artists, you got drawn into EDM maybe, 5 years ago, a lot of these kids did, but now I think their tastes have matured, both musically and what they expect when they go out. Like, you have to put on a good show. And if you're an artist, there's so many artists. What separates you from everybody else can be your production when you go on tour, or, like Above and Beyond, like, to me, their shows are emotional. When they play, it's not like crazy, crazy show, but like, they'll type some stuff on the wall, just some emotional messages, and people go crazy, start crying. And I just think that, like, that's the experience that, like, people want to have. And, like, I had Skrillex this weekend, 2 nights, and he was jumping up and down, going crazy all over the place, and that's what he wants his people to take away from his show. Yeah, you want to hear his music, but like the way you heard it is also just as important, I think. So the live elements are very, very important.
I would actually, don't want to flog a dead horse, and I think the other 3 panels have done a fantastic job explaining why the live aspect of electronic dance music is so important. I would actually take a different tack on it, because I think that the importance of live goes across the board in all musical genres, whether it's rock, pop, hip hop, etc. And it's really, if we look at the music business as a whole, a lot of things have been turned on their head. So acts used to tour in order to sell albums. Now acts record albums in order to sell tours. And I think that that's the best one-sentence summary of what has happened in the music business all across the board, not just in electronic dance music. There are other things that have happened equally revolutionary, where things have been turned on their head, but the importance of live really is that is a format of music consumption that is more, I think, is not as accessible as all the others. So let's say you like a record, you hear a record on the radio, you will probably be streaming it, or you're going to YouTube and you'll find it and you'll watch the video there. It is becoming increasingly unlikely that you would go out and buy the record that you heard on the radio and buy it because you liked it. So in that type of setting, the importance of recorded music and the importance of the live performance have basically traded places. And what has become by far the biggest financial component in a virtual pie that you want to construct is the income from live performances.
Pete, I want to go back to you, since you're one of our live events experts. You brought up visuals, which, as many people that have gone to the shows know, is a huge component of a live performance. So are there other ways that you aim to improve the consumer experience, whether it be through VIP packages or merchandise, or other ways of, I guess, engaging the consumer in the live event experience at your venues?
Well, at our venues, I think what makes it different is, I started Glow as a DJ, so whatever I do in my mind from venue layout is with a DJ perspective in mind. So, for example, a lot of the live rooms, no disrespect to them, but I don't think they're fit for a lot of EDM tours. What I mean is that, EDM, as he said, like we're all getting older. I'm 40 years old, I can't go into like a GA room and be with a crowd, because I'm too old for that, getting bumped and everything. But I want to have a table, and I want to have the experience of going to a show and having a table and watching it. So I think we offer the older fans the opportunity to have like that space for themselves, and a lot of bathrooms and a lot of smoking areas, and just making the experience good for them when they get there. As a venue owner, I don't want people in line, forever to get a drink. I want to have fast bartenders. I want them to get their drink as quickly as possible and go enjoy the show. Not waiting in line. It doesn't help anybody. So in terms of like, do we do VIP packages and stuff? Yeah, but most of that stuff is run through the artists. Because the artists have, more than ever now, it used to be like this in the rock world, but now it's like this in the EDM world. They have their, in a good way, they have their hands in everything. They control pretty much everything. They control what the ticket price is going to be, how many tickets you're selling, the merch, what packages you're going to sell. It's not really like you have a say, like, oh, I want to sell a Tiesto shirt with a Tiesto ticket. You can't just do that. But that's something that they'll tell you to do. But I just think overall, you need to have the experience. I wanted to bring a festival environment to a venue every week. Every week you go to Echostage, it's a festival. It's crazy. It's visuals. It's just your senses are going crazy, and that's what I think makes us different from most live venues.
One of the negative issues that is associated with electronic music, as we've gotten some bad press on it, is drug use and safety issues. So in the live event space, how much is this actually a problem specifically for electronic music, or is this just more, headlines focusing on the fact that it's electronic music when really it's, an entertainment-wide problem?
Yeah, this is a great question and something that all four of us probably deal with on a regular basis. And for me, I want to kind of focus on, first of all types of music there's always going to be, in any entertainment situation, even beyond music, there's going to be people who unfortunately take too much of something, whether it's alcohol or don't drink water and stand in the sun all day. It's just part of the human condition. No matter what, if you have a live event and 10,000 people come to the same place, I can guarantee some of them are not going to have a good time or might not take care of themselves. Unfortunately, rave culture, and even before my time, has always had a sort of a stigmata to it that is mostly, I think, bred out of ignorance and undereducation, but it's had a very negative kind of drug-related stigma. However, from a standpoint of live events, if you want to look at perhaps the most harmful type of music and the most takeaways in ambulances, if you look at country music, people get up at 9 in the morning, they start pounding alcohol, they don't have breakfast, and there are people being pulled out of the events and actually there was a huge event with this. I forget who the artist was. Maybe Luke Bryan had an outdoor amphitheater show. There were like 70 people taken to the hospital for drinking too much. There was a sexual assault issue. It's like, this happens everywhere, but it actually happens more in country music because I think it's just older people who have been doing it for so long, they kind of have the invincibility aspect. So I like bringing that up when people bring up, oh, these raves are hurting kids. It's like, well, Bruce Springsteen, 120 people went to the hospital. It's like a casualty event. So for me, that's kind of, that's my typical response when somebody says, what about the drugs and EDM? I think, young people are going to make mistakes. But it also kind of feeds into who the promoters are, what risks they take, and I think in Europe they've done a very good job of adjusting to the atmosphere and finding ways to prevent bad things from happening. And we just did an event in cooperation, 11 of my clients played, and Pete was one of the promoters, called Moonrise Festival, where we had, tens of thousands of people every day. It was 95 degrees, it was sunny, typical festival atmosphere for an EDM festival. There were no fatalities and very, very few issues whatsoever with health, in part because the event was staffed properly, there was free water given away, people were searched properly coming into the venue, people who were severely intoxicated weren't let in. So it is partially something that educated promoters can help go away by doing their job right. But also, ultimately it depends on the person, and if people choose to over-imbibe, I don't think it matters where they are, they're the ones who are responsible for their own health. So that's kind of my take on it.
It's a scary thing. You can see, if you play a show and you see 8 people and they're just out of their faces. It's, even just as an artist, you can start to think do people really need to take drugs to watch me? And that's the big thing that's the big question mark for me about dance music. I love dance music personally, and I don't take any drugs, but it's a strange one for me to see these people come out and they take loads of drugs and they trip out and they watch the crazy light shows and whatever, and I'm like, is that necessary? Is there a love for the music behind you being here, or are you just like a moth drawn to the lights? It's just, I don't really have a big opinion on it because I'm not a drug user, and I can't really speak to the power of being at dance music and being, completely off my face. I'm told it's great, but yeah, it's going to happen at every genre show. It's just, yeah, as Ben said, it's just a stigma, I think.
It's tricky because, again, I'm dating myself, but back in the day, you would go out to a venue and you could tell somebody was intoxicated. They would be in line and you could tell they were drunk. You'd say, sorry, you can't come in, you gotta go home. Done. Now it's like everybody walks in, even though you search everybody and you try as best you can to make it a safe environment for everybody, you can't control what people do. And it's hard, I don't do drugs, it's whatever, but it's a problem we have right now in our society. It's not just EDM. I think hip hop, Molly is the biggest thing right now. Yeah. It's in a lot of worlds, it's something we have to deal with in society. I think we just got to educate people when they go out with their friends. Your friends have to look out for you, and as a venue, like we have EMTs on site always, and like a detox room and stuff like that. But it's hard, and these big festivals, it's hard too. Like I think a lot of the not to single them out in a bad way, but like Live Nation, the AAGs, and everybody, like they were coming from a rock world, and they started doing EDM events, and they started applying that same rock model to that. And their shows were, all the rock shows are all ages. Anywhere you go see it, Verizon Center or anything like that, it's all ages. And like one, I have a business partner, he has 4 kids, so me, I would never do an all ages show for EDM. I can't. I always think it's got to be at least 18 plus, just because, I feel like we have a responsibility. There shouldn't be a kid, 14 years old with some guy 40 years old drunk, it's not good. I think it's not the way people should be introduced to the scene.
There's an interesting thing in Europe. Like I've played in Europe way more than I've played in America. And for me, growing up listening to loads of dance music, there was kind of like a level of appreciation for the music before even any of that culture came into my immediate vicinity. So like I'm 16 years old, I can't get into an 18 plus DJ show. So I'm just listening to the tracks that I like, and I'm like, one day I'm going to be in a big club and I'm going to hear this loud, and that's going to be it. So I think the whole thing about not doing all ages is 100% right. It often, I think it breeds almost like I think it makes it more about the music than the than the experience.
You guys are ahead. You guys are ahead of us, like you were saying. I think now these kids that are 5 to 10 years old, whatever, they grew up listening. They're born to a world where it's on the radio. I never thought I'd see the day where 95.5 and 93.9 in DC, Chocolate City, we were playing dance music. I never thought I would see the day. And it's now it's 50% dance music. It's great. But I just think that now, again, people I think are getting more educated, both in taste and they're being, it's part of our culture now, and I think hopefully it'll help things.
Yeah. Kurosh, did you want to add anything?
Drugs are a serious issue, and they're a serious issue across the board. So there are just 2 observations I'd like to make. One, it's one thing to take drugs seriously as an issue. It's another to stigmatize a particular music format for, by associating it directly with a drug problem that is much broader than any type of music. And earlier on in the panel I said, when I first heard house music, I thought to myself, wow, this is a new rock and roll. I meant that as a musical comment because it turned traditional music arrangement on its head by what used to be the lead is in the background, and what used to just be the rhythm section is basically the lead in this type of music. So that was a musical comment, but it also, I'm a big fan of music business history, so I read a lot about the early days of rock and roll. And there was a day, believe it or not, now you go to Safeway and that's sort of what's a Muzak version of Big Rock Hits is playing in the background. There was a time when rock and roll was considered the devil's music, and any societal problems were directly tacked on that type of music. It's a long time ago, but in a way, we're seeing that a little bit with electronic dance music, and I think that is almost more dangerous than the general problem with drugs. I think that's akin to sticking your head in the sand, and I was very happy to hear examples, great examples, by the way, being brought up about hip-hop and about country music. It is a much broader problem in our society than this particular type of music, and blaming that societal problem on a type of music is just, I mean, that's beyond irresponsible.
Can you imagine if there was Facebook back then? The moment something happens at an EDM event or anything, it's all over the internet.
For me, the other thing, and this is almost a broader issue, whenever I can contribute in a public setting, whether it's as part of the Grammys or in any other way, it's really about focusing on one thing. This is a musical genre, not more, not less, and I don't expect special treatment at all. I do expect equal treatment. So when people say, oh, well, this isn't real music because somebody's not, strumming the guitar or, playing the violin, they're going to get the same reaction from me. And if somebody says, well, somebody died at this music festival because it's an electronic dance music festival, I'm like, okay, well, who's going to spend the time to come up with the statistics to prove that it is probably no worse than par for any event of that size.
Pete, you brought up Live Nation, and that was the next point I was going to get into. Now that electronic music is making money, we're seeing some changes in the players involved and the type of players that they are. So whether it be, the major labels representing the artists that go to the festivals or the shows, or whether it be companies like Live Nation, these are bigger and these are less flexible companies. So what kind of changes, and whether it be positive or negative types of effects, are you guys seeing by having these players in the market?
We haven't changed anything. I think they've pretty much adapted, and they've tried to get on this.
They're learning now. They're trying to learn. Like Live Nation came in and purchased Insomniac, and now they're getting kind of they're drowned and immersed in like, how do you settle EDC Vegas? Like, literally, like, how do we do this? We have no idea even from their global touring standpoint. This is bigger scaled and way different from what they know. So I think they have the money and made the purchases, but now they're learning from the same people.
It's different. It's like, I always tell people, it's like you don't go to a beer guy to buy wine.
I'm a little bit worried. Michelle, I think that's a fantastic question, one that doesn't get asked often enough these days on panels. There is a publicly traded company called SFX that's engaged in a very, very targeted, very concentrated effort on buying up the most valuable properties in electronic dance music, the properties being music festival brands. And I can't help but think at what point antitrust considerations come into play. I certainly do see a rise in anti-competitive behavior where these conglomerates, whether SFX or Live Nation, engage in tactics such as trying to tie talent down to their festivals, their venues for club play, and whether explicitly spelled out or communicated indirectly, tied to how that talent will be billed at the music festivals, etc. So this is starting to have, in a very competitive business, this is starting to have a direct impact on careers. And so to me, very interesting space to watch to see at what point it becomes a cause for official concern. And SFXE, if you want to look on the stock market, traded on NASDAQ, very interesting development, second coming for SFX, because they also rolled up the ticketing business in a previous iteration.
So I've been told we only have about 10 minutes left, so I want to open this up to questions from the audience, if there are any. Okay. If not, then okay.
More of a statement. My name's Howard. I'm a local producer and musician. But I took to heart a lot of what you all were talking about in terms of the live experience. And I think about more, I don't know, traditional bands now that have made that sort of impact on me. And they're the ones who have taken it where I feel I'm getting my money's worth. So I think about bands like the Flaming Lips, Radiohead, where it's not just the music. You go to a Flaming Lips show, it's this art piece, and you can't help but, feel teary-eyed. It's just so beautiful at certain points. But it almost sounds like what you guys were talking about, that EDM, for lack of a better acronym, is going through a lot of the birthing process in terms of this push and shove, big conglomerate stuff that rock and roll went through in the early 70s when, my dad started talking to me about going to concerts and stuff like that. And it was these big, going to see the big band in Madison Square Garden, and they had, you bought tickets only from Ticketmaster. So it sounds like you're going through that now, but maybe, hopefully, a lot of the artists you're working with can kind of pull from the past and maybe try to avoid some of those obstacles. And I don't know if you find that any are insurmountable at this point, or that you could maybe you have different ways of approaching a lot of those problems that rock and roll faced, 30 or 40 years ago, that you think might be able to overcome the big conglomerate thing?
The past is prologue, so the issues are similar. I don't think there's any issue you can't overcome. So if there is one thing that goes to the credit of, especially the talent involved in the genre of music, is innovation, and I think that continues to be the lifeblood. So I'm confident that there will be ways to maneuver around these things. But yes, absolutely, the problems are not unknown. Other genres of music have dealt with the very same thing.
Awesome. Thank you.
I just want to go back to what you were saying about shows that were incredible and amazing, like Flaming Lips or whatever. Mm-hmm. And this is more of a question to my fellow panelists. There's something that I worry about in terms of what's going on in dance music, and it is about a spectacle. And you go to a show and it is huge, and the production value is incredible, and it is amazing, and nothing bad about that. But I feel a problem in context, in the fact that there are artists out there who are making good music. They've got lots of fans, but they're not known as DJs, and they're not known as performance artists. And within the scene, there's a problem that they won't get a look in at these kind of shows. And right now there's a formula. You get a DJ, and they will come on your stage, and they'll play. You will have your light show set up, and they'll play maybe somewhere between 20 to 80% of their own music, and that's that. I think right now we're in the infancy of what's going on with live dance music. I think that personally, I'd love to see that envelope pushed to something akin to what you were saying about Flaming Lips.
Yeah, and I think also in general, it used to be, I guess, in rock and roll that, the older established bands would take some of the young bands or younger performers on the road. And I'm wondering,
still happens.
I was going to ask that as a follow-up. Do you see that happening in your genres of music?
It's happening to me in February.
Oh, it is? Okay. Awesome. Well, congratulations. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to go, and then we'll go back to that side? Okay.
I really enjoyed this panel back in the day when I was listening to Psychic TV and Lords of Acid and 808 State. I never dreamed that it would become mainstream, so it's really cool to hear. My question, actually, maybe for Pete or anybody else on the panel, and I was interested kind of in the live performance, and you had mentioned something differentiating the experience in a club versus like an arena. But I'm curious, now that you've got Skrillex and these major artists, is ticket scalping becoming a problem, and how do you guys deal with that compared to major arenas?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is.
Or is it something you even care about?
I mean, of course I care about it, because it's not fair to me. Like, because, a fee for an artist is based on how many tickets you could sell, and there's certain math behind what the artist expects to make. But, you know, if you put a ticket on sale for $50 and it sells out, you know, in 5 minutes, and then someone's selling it for $500, you know, me, in my personal opinion, I wish it was something like, you know, I went to, the Foo Fighters played on Friday, and I think you have to have a ticket, and you couldn't transfer the ticket, it had to be your name. And you have to show, and that's how it used to be for our shows. We used to use a company called Want Tickets, but I guess, like, you know, companies like Ticketmaster don't really care about that. I mean, it's hard to transfer tickets. I'm sorry, it's hard to make the tickets non-transferable. So it's kind of out of my control, but I would like it so it wouldn't be transferred.
Yeah, it's definitely a little infuriating when
Yeah.
you make a deal as an agent with a promoter
Yeah.
and everyone's happy and everyone's contributed something. They've put their time and their energy into something, and then you have this random third party or just a random guy who buys the ticket and is then selling tenfold.
Yeah.
Bass Nectar struggles with this more than many other artists. His tickets will sell at $50. He's trying to keep his tickets as low as he can and not gouge, and then people will scalp them for $500.
We cap it to 9 tickets per transaction, so you can't purchase more than 9.
Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, it's a continuing battle between agents, promoters, ticketing companies, and scalpers who obviously have extreme profitability by doing what they do.
That's a whole other panel. So.
Thanks, guys. Great panel.
Next question.
Thank you guys for a really interesting panel. I'm really enjoying this. I'm actually a student here in Georgetown. I'm taking a class just about the history of rock and roll and how it's developed. And you know, it's interesting to me that we haven't raised at any point in the beginning with the introduction of EDM into kind of the American market. We haven't spoken a lot about, you know, how the, you know, black culture of, you know, music that's been so defining in a lot of the genres here in America, how, you know, producers like Kanye or Timberland that had so many electronic elements in their, you know, production of different artists here in America kind of really opened that door and segued into, you know, what we talked about here. And I guess maybe tailoring it to a more relevant point with what we said about drug abuse and concerts and EDM specifically. I do agree that it's not right to blame it all on EDM and that it's a symptom of something bigger that needs to be treated. But at the same time, you know, when we talk about artists that, you know, gain a lot of popularity in the last couple of years, and you see, you know, songs like Wiz Khalifa that says, so what, we're young and we just want to, you know, go wild and free, and that kind of tailors so deeply into, you know, the culture that teenagers have when they go into these shows. Do you think that, you know, again, that point of cultures exchanging and exchanging all these ideas has some influence to what you see in concerts and EDM specifically?
So to speak to your first point, the whole wave of Detroit techno, which was really the first big American contribution after house music had sort of gone over to England to explode. I think all 5 of the pioneers were black Americans. One of them was our client. Their contribution to the scene is unquestioned. I think there's a museum exhibit in Detroit, so I mean that's definitely there. You'll find it in history books. One of the many hurdles to overcome for the scene was that was described, I forget by whom, but an American journalist as a problem with this scene is it's gay black music. So. You know, there's all of that, and the parallels to the history of rock and roll are really countless when you look at them. You know, the cultural factor is there. Going back to the drugs issue, the defining moment for me, and I'm very, very proud of the people involved in this genre, was when Madonna took the stage at Ultra Music Festival in 2012. And said, has anyone seen Molly, which is a very clear reference to ecstasy. There was a firestorm in terms of a backlash from the electronic dance music community about how low of a move that was by someone who I respected up until that point as a really great artist. I think the communal reaction to that was really something noteworthy, and yeah, let's leave it at that.
We'll just take the last 2 questions, and I think we need to wrap this up. So,
Hey, my name is Justin Zutnik. I'm the founder of a music festival analytics startup called Spaces FM. I'm wondering if you guys can reflect on what information holes exist in the music festival space, in the live event space, and how you measure success and reflect on problems.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about like measuring, like literally measuring who's there to see who, you know, like
Yeah.
how you measure popularity. One interesting point with that, SFX, who we were talking about earlier, also purchased Beatport recently.
Yeah.
And now they've been able to tap into the metrics behind Beatport, who's buying what records and where they live. And so I've actually, in conversation with a talent buyer from SFX recently, have said, well, you know, good news, your artist is more popular in Houston on Beat. You know, we're looking at the metrics to decide where to bill someone or what slot they play. And also companies like the company that's doing Mad Decent Block Party, Mad Decent Bow Party, Teamwork and Embrace have started a call-in poll where you tell them who you want to see, who you're looking to see at the show, who's the most popular artist, and they actually publish those results and let the agents know. And then Hard, if you've heard of Hard Events, has an app that ranks popularity. Everyone who downloads the app says who they're going to see, and many festivals have copied that. So we're actually, it's a great tool for the agents if you trust your client, because at the end of the day, you're starting to see, you know, I'll have one of my clients ranked, more liked, more scheduled than a variety of other acts that actually got billed over us, and that will now never happen again from my standpoint, because the proof's in the pudding. So it's a great question you bring up, and something that as an agent we all want to see is how do you measure who's actually the hottest actor, who deserves the headline billing, the headline slot.
Yeah, don't use DJ Mag.
Yeah, exactly. DJ Mag rankings for
I don't want to
Except for clubs.
I don't want to derail that too much, but surely you guys must have a consideration for this, the fact that because it's such an internet traded kind of community, there's going to be a lot of dance fans out there that aren't really people that want to go to shows. Like, I know for me personally, I've got quite a lot of fans who, the way they enjoy my music is they'll put it on, they'll play games, or they'll work, and that's where they want to see it. So I feel like that Beatport statistic thing would be great, and I see the value of that. But is there not a worry that that might be not completely indicative of what would go on at an event?
I think it's all a little pejorative, unfortunately. That's what agents and managers are for, and promoters. We have to duke it out eventually. One thing I do just want to say as a follow-up to that is I do believe in the music. I think we all do. If the music is great, if the show's great, people are going to come to the show, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I've had clients play at 2 o'clock at festivals and pack it all the way out to the fence, and the crowd is bigger than what the stage was meant to hold. When that happens, you kind of just sit there on stage and smile like an idiot, because you're breaking down the foundation that exists right now of the biggest client plays at the last moment on the biggest stage, and therefore gets the biggest crowd. So that's, it's all in the music at the end of the day.
Great question about metrics. For what it's worth, Nielsen offers a package. You may want to get in touch with them. No, very seriously, that is a product that they sell.
For the live event space?
Really with a focus on this genre of music, so I'm sure they can tailor it. I don't know. I don't think there's anything that measures it across the board, so that's what makes it a great question. So there's definitely a gaping hole there.
All right, let's take one last
Thank
question.
you.
Hi, I'm Bianca, student here at Georgetown. I'm taking the same rock history class that he mentioned. Something that we talk a lot about is authenticity, and the authenticity that the audience expects from the artist. And I think EDM has been criticized a lot about the DJs not being as authentic, and there's a lot of criticism about that. I actually went yesterday to see RAC, and I imagined, because I've followed them for a while, that it was going to be more DJ focused. But when I got there, the DJ was actually at the back, and there was drums and there was vocals. And even though they do a lot of remixes, they had people there singing and covering the songs that they were playing. Do you think that the future of EDM music is moving more towards this?
Hell yeah. Definitely me personally, I want to see I want to see it happen. The technology's there. I mean, there have been bands there are bands around at the moment like Netsky and Destroyed and Chasing Status and loads of others. I mean, me personally, I want to harken back to Pendulum, because they were the best. For me, they're the people who have done it the best. And I want to see someone take them out. I want to see someone take that throne, Me personally, like, for me, I love being a DJ, and I enjoy that, but there is, for me, that's not the ceiling. that's not the best you can do. That's not the best you can do for being on stage. Even if your light show and your production value is incredible, I think that's still, you're one guy playing records. And I still hold true to the fact, coming from punk bands myself, I hold true to the fact that to be on stage and seize that moment as an act is way more powerful and effective than being someone, DJing. It's a totally different art form. I mean, I don't want to get into too much, but like the fact that you can be there and the music's coming from you as people, I mean, I think it instantly connects with people on a not even a conscious level. So yeah, I think that's the future, 100%.
I think the sky's the limit. One of our clients, Carl Craig, has taken into 2 different musical formats. One into jazz as Interzone Orchestra, and they actually performed at the Montreux Jazz Festival, which is the pinnacle in that genre. The other one was with Deutsche Grammophon in a series where they had symphony orchestra perform dance music, electronic music. Another one of our clients, Paul Van Dyk, did something very similar in Frankfurt recently. So I just wanted to mention this because the musical genre has legs, so how it can be performed, really, there's no limit to it. The only limit is imagination, and I think Fox mentioned some great examples of people who have actually done it, and it goes much further.
Prodigy.
Yeah, exactly. So it happened much earlier, so it's always an alternative. I think the business end of it becomes a real factor because the beauty of a DJ set is no backline. You say no backline, any promoter will smile because that eliminates more than half their cost.
Yeah. And you're only taking one person away on a plane with a backpack as well. I see why it's become the way to do things, because someone can overnight go from the bedroom to a club and be ready to play because they know what they're doing. They've got their tracks in their backpack, and they can just do it. And it costs a flight and a hotel, whereas with a band it's going to be upwards of three people to like 8 people if you wanted to do it on that scale.
It just depends, I think. I think guys like Dubfire, who comes in with like 3 different tractor setups, and it's crazy. It's like, he does it right. I've seen some guys play live. It's just like they're looking down the whole time with the computer, and you're like, the crowd doesn't connect. Yeah. So like, I just think it just depends on the artist. At the end of the day, I think it's about the performance. And if you can get that across, doing it live, like Porter Robinson did on Good Morning America over the summer, that's great. Or you could do it like Tiesto did at Thank You Festival. At the end of the day, like I don't really care if I see Tiesto play producing live on stage for me, like Dubfire might, because his way of sending his messages by looking at him and see him enjoy his set and interacting with the crowd. So it's just different. I think they're both great. Yeah.
I think we have to wrap it up. Yep. So that concludes our panel. Thank you so much for coming.